The Galactic Council had observed humanity for 300 years. They watched the young species crawl out from their blue world, spread across a handful of colonies, and build what they considered a modest fleet. The Council found humans amusing. Their ships were loud, inefficient, and built with primitive fusion reactors. Their weapons relied on projectiles and crude plasma systems. Most advanced species had abandoned such technology thousands of years ago. Admiral of the Dominion stood on the observation deck of his flagship, the Eternal Silence. He watched the human grow larger on the Earth, a small planet with too much water and too many emotional creatures living on it. His fleet of 800 warships hung in the darkness like silver daggers, ready to strike. They had conquered 63 species. Humanity would be 64. Scan their defensive positions, a commanded. His tactical officer, a young named, worked the console with his 4 arms. Admiral, they have positioned their primary fleet near their moon, approximately 200 combat vessels, standard human configuration, fusion drives, kinetic weapons, plasma batteries. Paused and made a strange sound. There is something else, Admiral. What is it? Behind their combat fleet there are older vessels, much older. Our database identifies them as museum ships, decommissioned warships from their previous centuries. They appear to be activating. I made the equivalent of a laugh. It was a clicking sound that echoed through the bridge. Museum ships, they are bringing antiques to a war. He turned to his communications officer. Open a channel to the human commander. I want them to hear me laugh at their desperation. The flickered and a human face appeared. She was older, with gray hair cut short and eyes that held no fear. Her uniform was simple dark blue with gold markings. Behind her, I could see a bridge that looked nothing like modern human vessels. The walls were metal. The screens were flat. Everything looked heavy and solid. I am Admiral of the Dominion. You are surrounded. Your fleet is outnumbered 4-1. Surrender now, and we will make your subjugation quick. The human woman smiled. It was not the smile of someone afraid. It was the smile of someone who knew something he did not. I am Admiral Sarah of the United Earth Defense Force, and you are making a terrible mistake. I clicked again. A mistake? We have conquered species far more advanced than yours. Your fleet is nothing, and those relics behind your lines, are those supposed to frighten us? We scanned them. They are hundreds of years old. Some of them still use chemical rockets for maneuvering. Chemical rockets. My grandfather's grandfather would have laughed at such technology. Admiral nodded slowly. Yes, they are old. The youngest of them is 240 years old. The oldest is nearly 400. They are museum ships. School children take tour through them. Families pose for pictures on their decks. We have kept them preserved, maintained, and ready. Ready for what? To be destroyed alongside your modern fleet. Ready for you, Admiral. Ready for anyone like you. The transmission ended. Shook his head. Humans were strange creatures. They clung to their past like it was a weapon. He would show them that the past could not save them. All ships advance, destroy their fleet. Leave the planet intact. We need the workforce. The armada moved forward like a wave of silver death. Their ships were sleek, beautiful, and powered by contained singularities. Their weapons were graviton beams that could tear apart molecular bonds. Their shields could withstand anything the humans could throw at them. The battle would be over in hours. The human fleet advanced to meet them. The modern ships took the front line, firing their plasma batteries and launching kinetic projectiles. The shields absorbed everything easily. I watched with boredom as his fleet began to systematically destroy the human vessels. Then the museum ships moved forward. There were 23 of them, 23 ancient warships from an era when humanity was still learning to travel between stars. They were ugly things, blocky, covered in what looked like armor plating. Their engines burned with visible fire instead of the clean glow of modern drives. They looked like they belonged in a history lesson, not a battlefield. Admiral said, his voice uncertain. The old ships are powering weapons. Let them, our shields will hold. The first museum ship, a vessel called the USS Defiance, opened fire. It did not fire plasma or graviton beams. It fired solid metal. A projectile moving at 12% the speed of light slammed into a cruiser. The projectile punched through the shields like they were not there. It punched through the hull. It punched through the reactor. The cruiser exploded. I stared at the what? What was that? Kinetic projectile, Admiral, but the velocity. It should not be possible. Our shields are designed to handle energy weapons. Mass drivers were abandoned by all advanced species because they were too slow, too primitive. No one uses them anymore. Except the humans. The museum ships fired again, and again. Each shot was a hammer blow that ignored shields. The shields were designed to disperse energy, to redirect graviton beams and plasma bursts. They were not designed to stop solid objects moving at relativistic speeds. No one had used such weapons in 10,000 years. No one had needed defenses against them. A second ship fell, then a third, then 10 more. Admiral's voice came over an open channel. You asked why we keep these old ships, Admiral. Let me tell you. Every species we have encountered told us our technology was primitive. They told us our weapons were outdated. They laughed at our projectiles and our armor and our chemical rockets. So we learned. We adopted your energy weapons. We built shields like yours. We made ourselves look modern. But we never forgot what we were. We never forgot where we came from. And we never stopped maintaining the old ways. The fleet was in chaos. Their beautiful silver ships were being torn apart by weapons that should not exist, weapons that no advanced species would ever think to use, weapons that had no counter because no one had needed a counter in. I watched as the museum ship called the Beijing fired something new. It was not a projectile. It was a missile, a nuclear missile, a weapon so ancient that children learned about them in history class as examples of primitive warfare. The missile struck a destroyer, and a small sun was born in the void. The electromagnetic pulse fried every unshielded system within 100 kilometers. Retreat, I screamed. All ships retreat. But it was too late. The museum ships were not alone anymore. The modern human fleet had reformed behind the relics, using them as shields. The old ships could take punishment that would destroy any modern vessel. Their armor was thick, physical, real. It did not rely on energy fields. It relied on meters of steel and titanium and materials that no one used anymore because they were too heavy, too wasteful. But those materials stopped weapons. They absorbed impacts. They kept the ships alive. A museum ship called the Leningrad rammed a battlecruiser. The ship was larger, more advanced, more beautiful. The Leningrad was a block of metal with engines. When they collided, the ship crumpled like paper. The Leningrad lost its forward section but kept fighting. Its crew kept firing. They had trained for this. They had waited their entire careers for this moment. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, 412 ships had been destroyed. The rest fled into hyperspace, their admiral among them. I would spend the rest of his life trying to explain how museum ships had defeated the greatest fleet in the Dominion's history. Admiral stood on the bridge of her ship, the USS Constitution. It was the oldest vessel in the human fleet. It had been launched in 2089. It had fought in the Mars Rebellion, the Jupiter Campaign, and the First Contact War. It had been decommissioned in 2203 and turned into a museum. For 200 years, it had sat in orbit around Earth, welcoming visitors, teaching children, preserving memory. Now its guns were warm again. Its armor was but unbroken. Its crew was tired but alive. Admiral, her communications officer said, "We are receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. They want to negotiate." Smiled, the same smile she had shown, the smile of someone who knew something others did not. "Tell them we will listen, but first tell them this. Humanity remembers. We remember every war we have fought. We remember every weapon we have built. We remember every ship we have sailed, from wooden boats to starships. We keep our museums not just to honor the past, but to preserve it, Because the past is not weakness. The past is power, and anyone who forgets that will learn the same lesson they learned today. The council would learn. They would study human history with new eyes. They would discover that humans never truly abandoned anything. Somewhere on Earth, there were still people who knew how to make swords. Somewhere, there were people who knew how to build sailing ships. The knowledge was preserved, passed down, protected, because humans understood something that older species had forgotten. The universe was vast and full of dangers. Technologies changed. Enemies adapted. But the old ways, the proven ways, the methods that had worked for centuries, these would never truly become obsolete. They were insurance. They were backup. They were the ace hidden in the sleeve of a species that had fought its way up from caves to stars. The museum ships returned to their orbits around Earth. They would be repaired, restored, and returned to their displays. School children would tour their decks again. Families would pose for pictures again. But now there would be new plaques on their walls. New stories to tell. The story of the day the relics woke up and reminded the galaxy why humanity had survived. Admiral retired 3 years later. She spent her remaining days volunteering at the Constitution Museum, giving tour to visitors from 100 different species. She told them the same thing every time. These ships are old, they are slow, they are primitive by your standards, but they are still here, they still work. And if you ever threaten our home, they will wake up again. So will the ships behind them, and the weapons we have not shown you yet. The ones we keep in deeper museums. The ones we hope we never have to use. Remember that, remember us, remember what we are. The visitors always listened. The visitors always remembered. And no one ever laughed at human museum ships again.